Hi and welcome to The Wire's conversation with Arundhati Kaju and Aisha Kapoor. This is the morning after. This is the morning after the Supreme Court has decriminalized Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. Section 377 was a repressive piece of British-era colonial legislation that criminalized unnatural sex. But what that essentially meant was that it caused repression and harassment to people who identify as sexual minorities in India, which includes people in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer community. So we're here with Arundhati Kaju, who is one of the lawyers on the team, as well as Aisha Kapoor, who is one of the petitioners who brought this to court in 2016, and we are now here 2 years later. The morning after, it has been decriminalized and India is celebrating. So let me just begin, first of all, by asking Aisha, how are you feeling today? And what did yesterday mean?
Feeling very overwhelmed. I think that feeling of being overwhelmed hasn't gone yet, but in a good way. It's not a heavy overwhelming. It's a very light overwhelming, and just very, very, very positive, very grateful. From being upset to move to thankful and grateful, I think is already a huge shift, you know. And just incredibly happy that something that has taken so enormously long has finally culminated in a day that is going to and has already made a huge, monumental, indescribable difference to millions of Indians. You know, when we walked out of that court yesterday, I cannot actually describe how wonderful yesterday was. It really was a day of sunshine and rainbows after very cloudy skies for a very long time. Okay. So yeah, that's how I would describe it.
Yeah. Did you ever see yourself as someone who would one day go to court on an issue like this, and the Supreme Court no less?
If I can be very, very, very honest with you, never. Never. Not for any other reason, because one didn't think that there would be, groups of people, activists, lawyers who would be taking this up. But I think that it has also taken, for some of us, a lifetime of also finding that courage. And I have to be very honest, 10 years ago, when I began the process, or 10 to 12 years ago, of coming out and being honest about who I am with the world, really, because it's one thing to be honest with yourself, and then it's another thing to say, this is me, take me as I am. Which is, the words that Chief Justice Deepak Mishra spoke yesterday. 10 years ago and today, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think that I would be someone that would have been a petitioner in such a public way, because one has also gone through a process which has been very long. But I'm very glad that I did it. I'm very glad that it did happen. But I think that it's also, I think a lot of credit is due to people who've given people like me the courage, the sanction, the acceptance, the acknowledgement that, look, you're a full citizen of India. There's nothing wrong with you. Because I think from the time that one is born, up until now, and I'm sure it's not a switch. It's not like it's all done and we've achieved everything but the law today, the highest court of the land today, says you're not deviant, you're simply a variant on something, and you're entitled to be an equal citizen of the land that you love and you're proud of, and you're basically a law-abiding citizen on every other count, and something as fundamental and intrinsic as this, which is what I am. So it's huge.
Okay. Arundhati, let me ask you as a lawyer on this case what this means for you. Because, I mean, I read the piece you just wrote for the Times of India where you have located the process of what has happened in the court, but also, you know, what the court actually has finally done, you know, the culmination of that process. And you've located it in a post-colonial context, in a historical context, in a more, you know, global and a global south context. So as a lawyer, you know, you're doing cases all the time, you're winning some, you're losing some. This is clearly not just one order and one favorable order, but what does this mean in terms of, you know, the work that you have done for so many years and this moment that you are at now, but locating it in that larger context?
I think this case shows that the court is firmly establishing itself as a counter-majoritarian institution. And with this judgment, you really see that coming out very clearly. So Justice Mishra talks about individual rights and, you know, the autonomy of the individual. Justice Indu Malhotra has said that history owes an apology to LGBT people. But what you've really seen, I think, with some judgments in the recent past, but very clearly with the Johar judgment, is that the court now sees itself as a counter-majoritarian institution that also speaks to majoritarianism and protects individuals against the tyranny of majorities, if we call it that.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, this issue of majoritarianism, constitutional morality versus majoritarianism is an issue that we have dealt with now over the many years of litigation. This judgment has now kind of clearly and resoundingly, I would assume or hope, has closed the door on it. However, in your TV studios, you still have people saying things like, but this is not our culture, this is not what the majority wants. And the technical backing from that comes from the fact that our parliament has not enacted legislation to this effect. Now, as a lawyer, this is your craft, this is your tool, these are the skills you have. But given that we live in this, you know, democratic framework, does it bother you, or is it a matter of concern for you that we didn't see this happen from the parliament? Would you wish that it had happened from the parliament? Is that a better way to go? Should we be asking for our rights from, you know, the parliament instead of this? I mean, it's great that this has happened, but should that have been the ideal situation?
So, a couple of points, right? One, I think for sexual minorities, change has come from the courts, right? Even if you look at the United States, for example, Proposition 8, so they have gone back to their courts for social change. I think the other issue was that we are very clear that it was the Supreme Court that was going to do this, because judicial review is a prime function of the court. So judicial review is what the court is supposed to be doing. And in that sense, this case, right, the Navtej Singh Johar case, is a classic example of judicial review. This is a section, Article 32 petition, which means that these are individuals who have petitioned the Supreme Court saying that there's a law that violates their fundamental rights. And what the court is doing is looking at the law, evaluating it against the constitution, and in this case they've said that section 377 is violative of articles 14, 15, 16, that's the equality code of the constitution, article 19, article 21, that's life and liberty, and therefore they've struck down 377. So the point is that this is judicial review, right? This is the court's basic function, and that's what they've done. So if whether parliament decided or did not decide, and parliament has made attempts, right? So Shashi Tharoor's bill, which wasn't even tabled finally. So if parliament isn't acting, it's really not for the court then to leave it for parliament to decide. This is judicial review, this is a classic Article 32 petition, and the court's doing what it's supposed to do.
Okay, question for both of you, I guess. You know, change historically or change now in this matter, you know, happens with many different acts. Like it happens in an ecosystem, right? Many different people will have to do many small actions over a large period of time, and then we have some sort of change. And that change itself is open to contestation. And, you know, you had 2009, but then you had 2013. And now we have 2018, but, well, who knows? So in this space of things, this is the morning after, but how empowered and affirmed and emancipated do you imagine people will really feel with a court order? You know, what do we do about translating that? Is it translatable? You know, to whom does this court order matter? To what extent does this matter? Do you want to go first?
I think what happened yesterday in the Supreme Court was so much more than just a court order to begin with. To hear from 5 individual chief justices, that this is not only about you being a sexual minority, which of course they have covered enormously well, fantastically. That's one part of it. But the two is it's not only about a sexual act. We are everyday citizens, we're lawyers, we're in offices, we're daughters, we're sons, we're so many different things. This just happens to be one part of who we are. So I think that is something that the court has changed yesterday, because for whatever it's worth, that is the message also that has gone out, that this is not about what you only choose to do, or the debate of whether it's a choice. I mean, let's not go into that, but this is not about what happens in your bedroom. This is about you as a full person, as a human being. They've referred to this, each of them individually. I haven't had a chance to read the entire judgment with in a detailed, slow way, but it has talked about all these things. Also remember that we don't exist only as individual entities that only have our own lives. We have families, we go out into a workspace, we're citizens, so we operate at many different levels. There's so many spaces that we occupy. We also then work within the legal framework. So the legal framework is one part, which they've decriminalized, but they've done so much more. I have got, my father for instance yesterday got a phone call saying that, oh, I didn't realize that this was your daughter and congratulations. So that in itself is huge. My father's never got a phone call congratulating him he has for other things, when one was in school and one graduated from college and one did all the regular everyday things that everyone's kids do. For instance, I've got messages from nieces and nephews, from aunts. So I think that it's more than just a court order. And yes, of course, there are minds that maybe are not on the same platform as us, for lack of a better word, or they don't see it the way that we do. But I think that it's hugely monumental, because when I was growing up, there was no vocabulary. What do you do with something like this when you don't even have a language for it? But today I see kids, 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, who go out and who have no apology for who they are. And what a wonderful thing for them to live their entire life, or at least a much more substantially larger part of their life than a lot of people have had, to live without apology, live with pride, and live with dignity, and live with absolute freedom. So I think the court has created a solid foundation for this to really change things on the ground in a very real way. And yesterday in an interview with on another channel, Gautam Bhan said it very appropriately. He said that it will start a conversation, change will happen, because you may not, and at the end of the day we live in a democracy, and everyone's entitled to their own view. I think we would be very hypocritical to now sort of want to say, no, but we're going to impose who we are. I think it's about coming together somewhere, and it will happen for sure. I'm very, very, very positive about it. Yeah.
Arundhati, as a lawyer, every day, or like I said, every day, or this is your business. To what extent does a court order penetrate society, and to what are its limitations and what are its extents?
I think it makes a huge difference. Actually, I think as lawyers, especially, we tend to forget, because we see it as our workplace. We're there every day. You see it as an institution. So sometimes you forget that. Citizens have a relationship with the Supreme Court, that they look to the court and its understanding of the Constitution. And the court speaks for them and it speaks to them. So the way in which the court interprets constitutional morality, and when it stands for constitutional morality, right, the morality of the court is constitutional morality. I think citizens respond to that, and it makes a difference. And it's something for us to remember, in this case, but in many cases, whether it's Sabrimala, whether it's Aadhaar, this term the court has really had some heavy duty matters on its plate, whether it's Manipur, that the court really speaks to citizens, and citizens look to the court when it enunciates constitutional morality.
Okay. I just want to address this issue of time and how long it takes for justice. Because you guys had docked your petitions in 2016, and suddenly Deepak Mishra pulled a rabbit out of a hat in January, and suddenly we were discussing this issue again, and we were going to have fresh arguments, the whole 9 yards. But before that, we had a litigation starting in 2001, and it's 17 years, and we've still not gotten there. And even before that, in the 90s, there was litigation that was looking to decriminalize this. So, but we're talking about a piece of law that has been on the books for 158 years, 71 of which has been in independent India. So, how do we, what do we make of this? How long it takes for justice, and what is the incentive? I often wonder, whenever I see litigants, whatever the case, whether it's a rape case or a, something like this or whatever it is, what is the incentive to pursue this? Where do you find any good reason to pursue this?
So I think the delay in the judicial system can really wear people down, right? And something we see as lawyers. I mean, it can really sort of drain you of hope. But as far as these issues are concerned, I think it's also important to remember that this change has taken time, right? So when you look at a same-sex marriage case in the US, for instance, like Obergefell, I think was 2016, it seems like it happened very quickly and that it had to happen, but actually that's not the case. Bowers versus Hardwick, which is the US Supreme Court's equivalent of the Kaushal decision, came in 1986, I believe, and they finally overturned their own sodomy law in Lawrence versus Texas in 2003. So that's almost 17 years. If you compare that to India, Kaushal is a 2013 decision, and thanks to Aisha and Naftej and the others, we were back in court in 2016, and in 2018 we have this judgment. So that's a 5-year move. So I think the thing is that these things take time. It takes time for perspectives to change. But time is comparative as well.
Yeah, I mean, as a petitioner, as someone who most of us have really never approached court, and thankful for our lives that have involved us not having to maybe even enter the police station if that's possible. But I mean, how do you mentally prepare for this? Knowing that we're coming with this baggage of 158 years, what gives you the good reason to think that something's going to change in your lifetime?
I think it's something that everyone who's been involved, and I think that the lawyers, Arundhati, Manika, Saurav, I think it's been an effort by so many people at so many different levels. Whether it's the petitioners, whether it's what was started in 2001, about little communities that came up when there was a feeling of safety to do that. I think it's just been so many. I don't think it's just one thing. Like you said, it's an ecosystem. And yes, 17 years is a very long time. I agree with you. But I think that a lot of things have happened concomitantly, There's been dialogue, there's been discussion, there have been conversations. There's been a lot of positive vocabulary around it. I think it's also taken a cue from what's happened, to some extent globally. I think the discussion has also moved from it not just being gay rights, but being human rights. We are talking about larger issues out here. It's not just about, what you do in your bedroom and so on and so forth. And I think things have happened together, the conversations outside the courtroom, what's finally played out in the Supreme Court. And I think that it's something that we all came together because it's something that we really felt very strongly about. I can't say that I knew exactly what it would entail, But it's something that we just said that we need to do. And I think that's how it came to be.
No, I mean, I think for me, I've been thinking about this a lot because it's, this idea of unconvicted felons that we've been hearing over the last many years, right? And the litigation also has sort of, there's something very important and specific and powerful about putting a face, because essentially, I think what we've had with this clutch of petitions is people have put on an affidavit, they've come out of the closet on an affidavit. And, there's something political and powerful about doing that also. So that's something that I have been thinking of. But let me just end on, what you just said, which is this is not just about, dropping a section of the law or whatever. It really is about human rights. It's about something larger and more elevated, higher than, just the ability to perform an act. And I mean, I was in court during the hearings and we had a whole bunch of male lawyers, even the ones who were representing the petitioners. But really for them, the discourse, the tone, the kind of language they used, the choice of words, it was really so reductive, I felt, about body parts and what body parts can do with each other. And then it took some effort, and then Menaka was there, and and it took some effort to lift it and talk about it in terms of human rights, talk about it in terms of love, talk about it in terms of life, life choices, and the ability to live your life, and talk about dignity. So just closing perhaps comments from you guys about how you would like for people to see this. How much do you want people to open their minds when they think of this, when they read this judgment, when they absorb it? What do you want people to really absorb from this? Is it really that we've decriminalized gay sex, as all the headlines are saying? As journalists, we have had that constraint of having to make a short headline, and we've all been saying it's decriminalized gay sex. Is this about decriminalizing gay sex and the ability for two people to do what they want with their bodies, or is it something else?
Not at all. I mean, I think, it's really about stories and people's stories. I mean, as journalists, you know that much better than we do as lawyers, that people are moved when they hear the life stories of other people. And I think, hats off to all of you who came to court and allowed us to tell your stories, because that is really what moves people, that's what moves the court, and that's what the Constitution is about at the end of the day.
Last words, just to wrap this up, yeah.
I think it's about love and the ability to freely express it. It's not about body parts. I'll end with a very sweet anecdote from a very dear friend of mine who lives in America, who actually gave me a lot of courage when I came out. She's got a 6-year-old son. And when she heard that this had happened yesterday in India on the way to school, she told him that, in India it's an incredible day. And he walked into school. And he calls me Adu because he can't pronounce my name. That's the best that he could do when he was a little baby, so the name stuck. And he went to his teacher and he said, it's an incredible day. So the teacher said, well, what's so incredible about it today? And in this little child's mind, full of innocence, he said, Adu went to court and told the judge that this is very unfair. Of course, I had not gone and spoken to any, but in this, and she said, well, what is unfair? So he said, well, in India, till today, a girl could only love a boy, and a boy could only love a girl, but now today everyone can love everyone, so it's an incredible day. I think that's what this is about.
He gets it, huh? The 8-year-old
He gets it. Yeah, he's 6. Yeah. He gets it. Yeah. And I think that is what it is, at least to me, and I think it is about love.
Thank you guys for that. It is an incredible day, and it's important for people everywhere. To end with Deepak Mishra's words, I guess, take me as I am, and I think all of us should be telling each other that in the spirit of tolerance and dignity, that people should take us as we are and we should take people as they are. Thank you.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.